I've been working on a game using GPT to do kind of like life simulation or something, and I wanted to show where it's at. I'm actually kind of unhappy with the code, but it is somewhat playable, and so I'm probably going to tear it down and wanted to show it before I regress it by undoing all that. Um, so the idea is first you like set up a person, and um, they exist in a certain time and place. We give you some ideas. You can also select your own one if you wanted to. Um, Originally, I just had this first part, like, okay, you're gonna have some places in the United States, some smaller cities, etc. Now you can change this around by interacting with this. Um, like other projects here, this shows everything that ends up actually going to GPT in its like actual form. These are like some kind of chat messages and such. This is the kind of input interactives, and some of the information is going to go here as we start to set up the scenario. Um, so I did that. So for instance, I said, "Oh, pick one to, you know, pick four cities in the United States." I would always pick New Orleans, and it would usually pick San Francisco as well as some other kind of favorite cities, which is a problem because GPT is like, "Oh, that's a good choice," and it doesn't know that it always chooses that because it doesn't remember things. Now, I then changed it so that it would roll actual dice and come up with some options, which doesn't necessarily use those options, but it does mix things up a little bit. To do that, I actually basically said like, okay, create long lists, and sometimes I also then give it hints about why you would choose a particular item out of the list, right? So um, and then I edited these down a little bit and I put them in there, and then essentially I roll a die to pick the actual ones that end up in the prompt here, to try to get it to be a little bit more fair. Really, this first one, it knows nothing and there's no interesting input, so it's something we could probably hard code the very first one. Um, so here you can choose either a date, and then you would choose like a relevant, interesting place. Like you do this one, and then it would be like places that World War One um, were affected by World War One, as opposed to this. You would obviously choose very different places if you were playing in 500 BC. Or you can choose a place, and then it'll ask you about towns. Um, we can also just give it more general things like give locations in Africa, and hopefully it'll. All right, so here we have some different places in Africa. Um, It'd probably be helpful if I knew a bit about this, but maybe not. All right, let's try Marrakesh. Now, um, we have selected Marrakesh, and it's going to then find interesting years. Um, this is not perfect, but the idea would really be that you should be born in such a place that things get interesting as you become an adult. Um, this is the beginning of the city. Um, I don't know. Conflict is often more interesting. Um, what's a good? This is not as much conflict as I kind of expected, but then I don't know my Marrakesh history. Um, I don't know. Well, let's just see what it's like. What's it like to be at the beginning of the city's creation. Um, so now we have a location and a birth year, and the next thing we're going to ask for is some different options of a family. So kind of like some other ones, we give it some ideas about what would be an interesting variety. Those it kind of follows this too closely a little bit, but yeah. So here we have some like interesting things that might be just be a normal family where you can explore something not family related. Wealthy family, dark secret. What's a secret? Forbidden occult rituals. That's fun. Um, should do more of these secret ones because they tend to be the more fun ones. um, yeah, let's try that one. Oh, what's the minority one here? They are Jewish. Jewish. Is that, are those appropriate Jewish names in the place? I don't know. It's very hard, very hard to know. Does it know more or less than me? And when you get something like this, sometimes I do not know which one. All right, we have an occult family. That might add some interesting tensions. Here's who I'm going to be. I will play Ali Hassan. All right, and now it's going to create the um, childhood options for the childhood. So again, we've said a little bit about the family here, and we're using that to kind of influence this, and then uh, we're going to have a bunch of different childhoods. Um, and again, I have this like kind of template which um, I feel like it's too strong. It should take more from the family and less from this template that I've given it, but it's also not terrible. Um, so we got some trauma. So here, each one also includes some like things that happened in the childhood that led to this specific thing. Now, we won't necessarily keep these, but the idea is like we want the idea of a life driven by the narrative in the life. And so we use this to kind of center it around that sort of thing. Um, all right. Parents dying, just like in real life stories, that is a common thing. I don't know how common it is everywhere, but in real life, but is certainly common in stories. Um, all right, goes on an adventure to Timbuktu. Um, all right, this is getting mystical. Let's see what happens. Um, having a mystical one. I've tried some where like it plays in the future or does other kind of dramatic things, and I would say that in general that has not been successful. I think historical is a bit better, though even historical stuff has been challenging at times, um, which I don't think is unresolvable, but is definitely an issue. So the first thing we do is we ask it to say, okay, we know a little bit about this person. Let's just write the entire person's life. So the person's life involves they're born, they become part of their occult things, they discover the amulet, always at much too young an age. Um, it squeezes a lot into those very early years. Like, oh, they're 2 years old and they discover their parents' secret or something. Um, but the whole life, so we want this idea again of narrative, even though we're going to throw most of this away, just the fact that you had this like narrative. Ooh, 101. Interestingly long life. Um, and now then we're going to like take some of these events in the beginning and say, okay, what would be a good time to say, what when does this person start having important events that they demonstrate their autonomy and start defining who they are and what they're about. And so here are some different possible items here. Hidden library, blood moon ritual, it's going down deep. Uh-oh. A friend threatens to expose them. That's kind of interesting. And these are not like winnable. There's no like goal in this. These are places to explore who this character is, and then as you explore them, we're gonna like say more about them, right? So like this whole life is built on this setting, basically, right? This family, this childhood, and such. Um, but when we had this chance to like become the person and act as them, maybe we'll have a chance to change that life, and now things will be different. All right, let's try betrayal. That offers some interesting things. So now it is going to take this like basic outline that we've created. Right, we have who the person is, the family. This has happened a couple times. I'm gonna try just reloading this, and it'll run it again. Um, I don't know why that's happening exactly because this should be valid. We're using new GPT functions down here, and it's going to do a function call, and that function call is actually just a parsed version. We don't ever execute it, but it's a way of getting a parsed version. So we want to have all the base information that is necessary to set this up. It would show up here, but I have a bug there. All right, so we want to know things like um, why is this important? This is not necessarily something we would make use of, but it's good to like have GPT re-emphasize things. You want it to make sure it brings up in the later parts. Um, so here we have the character themselves. Here we have the other person, and we have a little bit of information about the person. their personality, their goals, and that's going to be used to do this, and then the location, and then this intro, which is not effective. So we have a little bug here, so we'll just reload and it'll start it properly. And now this is and it is always doing this. It launches into speaking for you, and this is a bug I fixed in different versions, but it's kind of regressed here. But so instead of just like a pure chat thing, um, there's actually these like back and forths in different parts. And so like this is a description of a person. It's not, of course, some of them use their full name. That's going to be a problem. Probably causes some of this issue. A description of location, some other background, um, and shouldn't speak for the player, but it's yeah, having a problem there, which I think is a name confusion thing. Sometimes I refer to Ollie as Ollie, and sometimes I refer to them as Ollie Hassan, and it thinks it says like like some of the places where I specifically exclude it. It's still doing it anyways. Um, all right, so here I have this chance. All right, so let's try to gaslight Kareem. So here we should be talking, and the pretense we're giving here is that you are um, we're writing a script. This isn't actually a discussion between the assistant and the user. The assistant is not Kareem. I am not Ali. Instead, the two of us are working together to write an interesting script, bits by bit. I actually have some stuff turned off here. Um, so there is also these thoughts and stuff. So here, instead of just saying something, it also like thinks about things, and that's going to be part of the ongoing back and forth. Is it's going to be able to know not just what Kareem says, but it's also going to be know why Kareem says that, and that's going to give it better personality continuity. So let's see, and I don't know if it's right to hide these or not, but of course right now it's best to show them all because you got to figure out what's going on. All right, how could you hide this? Now, it's very possible that Kareem is going to be. Ah. Um, so we'll just deny, deny, deny. Now, there's no endpoint at some point. We need to like, I don't know if that's going to be something defined initially is like what are some of the condition points for the end. Once we have those, we might then during this response process also allow it to say, okay, everything's over, we're finished, now we're ready to move on to the next phase. Um, but for now, it's going to go on indefinitely. Once it does have an endpoint, what we're going to do is then take the transcript, give it back to GPT, and say, okay, what does this tell us about Ali? What does it tell us about any relationships or important choices? But there might not be any like important choice. Like maybe this reveals, maybe because of how I act here, our whole family is outed and they get ejected from society. But very possibly nothing like impactful exactly happens. But it's going to say something about Ali. So here I am, lying and being deceitful. Um, So, and I'll say, in general, it is possible to, uh, yeah. So see, I'm actually convincing Kareem. An important part here is that, again, there's no right answer, and you can actually do impactful things. So, like, one of the ways I could go through this would be I'm going to admit everything to Kareem and maybe get him to go onto my side, or I'm going to deny everything, or maybe I will just kill him in a terrible ritual or something. All these are kinds of like possibilities, and then the consequences come out of that, which I'm feeling like there's a lot of opportunity for player autonomy in a way that's different from games before. Um, there really is no like single expectation about what's going to come out of this. Uh, sure. Come back to my house and I will show you everything. It's not what you think. All right. Um, Now, some of the tools I use to keep these conversations under control I haven't implemented in this place, so it's possible we'll run out as this, see, that's a long prompt there. So when we look at this, everything that's in white text here is the prompt that I'm sending to GPT, and then it is responding with this green part right at the bottom here. Um, So as you see, it gets a lot longer each time. And there's techniques I've used in other processes that do compression. So we take this long-winded thing where it's like, here is everything I'm thinking about, and these thoughts, these decision processes, and thoughts and emotions and the outcome um, can be very repetitive and not that interesting. And so the compression often just like removes them, while also trying to like when there's something important. Now for actual action, here it's actually saying like, okay, I'll do this, but it's not going to be, it's going to be somewhat. I can just say something like, Ali and Kareem go to Ali's house, right? And it's just going to follow along. It's not a adversarial system. I can come up with lots of things, but it doesn't, even though it's not adversarial, and even though I can tell it to do things and tell it that things just happen. Um, it doesn't mean that I can like undo the essentially the transcript that leads up to that. So I could like, I don't know, use the magic to take over his mind, but that's going to become part of who Ali is. He is the sort of person who uses the amulet magic to sea line. Uh, Now let's see. I'll try something like the shows the amulet to Kareem, allowing Kareem to become hypnotized by its dark magical power. Then he can speak to Kareem and control him. This may or may not work, but it's a good chance that it'll go along and say like, I don't know. That's a very odd response. Look into the amulet. I do have a little back thing here. Actually, I'm gonna redo it. I'm gonna use my back door where I can actually control it a little bit more directly. Kareem will become hypnotized by the amulet's dark magic. All right. So a little bracket thing is a way to kind of put in instructions that are outside of this dialogue thing and then control things. So see here, it actually works. I will tell no one. We'll have to overlook the robotic part, which works perfectly fine as a description, but it's not a contemporary description. Um, I don't know like to what degree that should be part of the game or not, but it's also, it does get stuck in loops and things, and that gets it out. And I think it's still like a successful way to explore things, even though I'm kind of like breaking, forcing GPT to do something. Um, and you can use it kind of, more limited if you want to. Uh, yeah, so that's the where it's at now before I tear it all down and start over again. And just wanted to kind of show it.